The screams in the canyon. The sun was setting on the rocky alien planet called Verdas. Orange light stretched across sharp cliffs and deep canyons. The wind was dry and silent. But something broke the silence. A scream. Not an echo. Not the wind. Real scream. Jack, a lone human explorer, stopped in his tracks. He had been hiking alone, scanning the area for rare minerals. His scanner beeped softly on his hip, but he ignored it. That scream chilled him. It was full of fear. Jack looked around. He stood at the edge of a high cliff. Below, the canyon was narrow and dark. He leaned forward carefully, holding a hand to his ear. There it was again, a cry, a whimper. Someone or something was down there. He grabbed a rope from his backpack and secured it to a strong rock. Then, slowly, he lowered himself down the cliff. His boots scraped against the rock as he descended. Dust rose into the air. The deeper he went, the louder the sound became. It was a voice, but not human. It had a soft musical tone mixed with sobs of pain. When Jack reached the bottom, he turned on his flashlight. The canyon was tight and shadowy. Strange, glowing vines hung from the walls. Alien bugs crawled away from his light. Then he saw it. Shimmer. A movement. Near a pile of broken rocks, something moved weakly. Jack stepped closer and froze. It was a girl. An alien girl. She was small, no older than a teenager. Her skin was a pale lavender with faint bioluminescent patterns glowing along her arms. Her eyes were large and golden, full of tears. But what shocked Jack the most was her tail. A long, sleek tail covered in soft scales was trapped under heavy rocks. Blood leaked from a wound. The rocks had pinned her in place. When she saw Jack, she gasped and tried to back away. But she couldn't move. Her mouth opened. She spoke in her alien language, fast and panicked. Jack slowly raised both hands. "It's okay. I won't hurt you," he said gently. She didn't understand the words, but maybe she felt the tone. Her eyes softened just a little. Still, her body shook. Jack crouched down and looked at the rocks. They were heavy, sharp, and pressing down hard. She must have fallen. Or maybe worse, maybe someone pushed her. He glanced around. The canyon felt, watched. No time to think. He carefully placed his hands under one of the rocks and tried to lift. It barely moved. He gritted his teeth and tried again. This time, one of the stones slid off. The girl cried out in pain. Jack paused. Sorry. He reached into his pack, took out a water pouch and held it toward her. She hesitated, then took a small sip. Her lips trembled. Her eyes stayed on him, curious but afraid. Jack returned to the rocks. He worked slowly, one by one. His arms ached. Sweat dripped down his face. Finally, after what felt like forever, the last rock rolled off. The girl gasped and pulled her tail free, but she couldn't stand. Her body collapsed, weak and shaking. Jack caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was cold. She looked up at him, her eyes full of confusion. Jack whispered, "You're safe now." Suddenly, a growl. Low, deep. It echoed through the canyon like thunder. Jack turned his flashlight toward the sound. Glowing green eyes stared back at him from the dark. Something huge was watching them. The girl's eyes widened in terror. She whispered one word again and again. Guruk. Guruk. Jack didn't know what it meant, but from the fear in her voice, he knew one thing. They weren't alone. And something was coming, the tail beneath the stone. The canyon felt colder now. Jack didn't move. The growl still echoed in his ears. The alien girl was in his arms, weak, bleeding, and trembling. Her tail was finally free, but now she looked even more afraid. Her glowing eyes were locked on the darkness behind Jack. Guruk, she whispered again, barely breathing. Jack didn't know what Guruk was, but his instincts screamed danger. Slowly, he turned his flashlight toward the shadows. Nothing. Only sharp rocks and hanging vines. Then, movement. A shadow slid across the canyon wall. Fast, too fast. Jack stood up quickly, gently helping the girl sit against a large stone. She tried to get up but winced in pain. Her tail was bruised and torn. Blood trickled down from the wound, soaking the dust beneath her. He knelt beside her. "Stay here. I'll protect you." She didn't understand the words, but something in his eyes made her stop trying to crawl away. Jack pulled a small flare from his bag and held it tight. Then he scanned the rocks around them. No way back up. The rope was still above, too far to climb with an injured girl. They were trapped. The growl came again, closer this time. Jack clenched his jaw and moved to the narrow entrance where the shadow had disappeared. His heart pounded in his chest, like a drum. He remembered every story he had read about alien predators that hunted the weak and wounded, and now they had smelled her blood. But just as Jack raised the flare to strike it, silence. The growl was gone. He waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Still nothing. Was it gone? Behind him, the girl groaned softly. He rushed back to her side. Her skin was growing paler. She blinked slowly, her breathing shallow. Jack tore a piece of fabric from his sleeve and gently wrapped it around her wounded tail. It wasn't perfect, but it would stop the bleeding. The girl whimpered but didn't pull away. In fact, she let him finish, then rested her hand lightly on his wrist. For the first time, she tried to speak English. Soft. Broken. Human. Jack nodded, surprised. "Yeah, I'm Jack." She touched her chest weakly. "Sira. Sira," he repeated. "Okay, Sira. We're gonna get you out of here." She gave a weak nod, but when she tried to move, her tail dragged behind her, limp and useless. She couldn't walk, and Jack knew it. He looked around the canyon. The rocks were steep, the walls high. The only way up was the rope, and he couldn't climb with her in his arms. Not safely. They needed shelter. And time. Then he saw a narrow gap in the canyon wall, just wide enough for them to crawl through. A hiding spot. He helped Sira up, wrapping her arm over his shoulder. She hissed in pain but didn't stop him. Slowly, step by step, they made their way to the crack in the rock. Inside, the space opened into a small cave. Dry, hidden, safe, for now. Jack laid her down gently. Sira looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, leave." "I'm not leaving," Jack said firmly. "You're not alone anymore." Sira's eyes filled with tears. Her whole life, aliens feared her tail, called it cursed, left her behind. But this human, he stayed, even when the Gurak came, even when others would have run. Jack stayed. As she drifted into sleep, Jack sat by the cave's mouth, flare in one hand, knife in the other. He didn't know what waited outside, but whatever it was, it would have to go through him first. The creature that hunts screams. The cave was silent, but Jack didn't sleep. His eyes stayed on the narrow entrance. His ears listened for any sound outside. Sira, the alien girl, was finally resting. Her tail, once crushed under stone, was wrapped in cloth. The bleeding had slowed, but her body was weak. Every few minutes she would stir and whisper that same word in fear. Gurak. Jack still didn't know what that creature was. But he was about to find out. Because outside the cave something moved. Not rocks. Not wind. Heavy footsteps. Slow. Measured. Jack rose quietly and stepped closer to the mouth of the cave. He didn't light the flare yet. He didn't want to show their position too early. His breath froze in his chest as he saw it. At the edge of the canyon path, half covered in mist, a massive shape crouched low, its body blending with the rocks. Its skin looked like cracked stone. Its long arms dragged across the ground. It had 4 glowing green eyes, 2 in front and 2 near its temples. Its nose sniffed the air, following the scent of blood. Sira's blood. Jack held his breath. The Gurak. The creature didn't roar. It didn't run. It stalked. It was a hunter. and it was close. Jack looked back at Sierra. She was shaking in her sleep, her tail twitching with fear. If the beast came closer, there would be nowhere to run. He had one chance. Silently, Jack pulled out his last emergency flare. It burned hot and bright, but only for a few seconds. He stepped just outside the cave entrance and took a deep breath. "Hey!" he shouted. The creature snapped its head up, its eyes locked on him. Jack lit the flare. Bright red light exploded in the darkness. The Gurak hissed and fell back, clawing at its eyes. It wasn't used to bright light. Its world was shadows and screams, not fire. Jack used the moment. He ran forward and threw the flare into the rocks behind the beast. The red glow lit up the canyon wall, confusing the predator. Then Jack sprinted back into the cave and dragged a large boulder halfway across the entrance, making a shield between them and the open space. Inside, Sierra was awake now. She sat up, eyes wide in terror. "Gurak!" Jack knelt beside her. "Shh, I know, I saw it, but it didn't get us." She looked at the stone he had moved, then at him. "You fight it?" Jack nodded. "I distracted it, but it's still out there." Sierra looked down. Her tail twitched weakly. She whispered, "No scream." Jack leaned in. "What?" She pointed to herself. "My scream. It finds..." Scream. Jack finally understood. The Gurak wasn't just a hunter. It hunted sound. It hunted fear. Her screams had brought it, and it was still listening. Jack pressed a finger to his lips. "Then we stay quiet." For hours they sat together in the cave, silent, still. Outside, the Gurak prowled the canyon. It sniffed the ground, walked in circles, and growled deep in its throat. But with no scream to follow, it became restless. Eventually, the creature turned and slipped back into the misty dark, leaving only its long claw marks behind. Sierra leaned into Jack's shoulder. Her voice was barely a whisper. No run." Jack smiled softly. "No, I don't run." She looked at him with wonder, like she didn't believe people like him existed. Aliens had left her behind. Her own kind had feared her tail. But a human had come when she screamed. And now, he stayed. Even with the hunter outside. Even with no one else around. This human, this stranger, was the only one who answered. And that meant something more than she could say. Fire in the sky. The sky above the canyon was turning violet. Tiny stars began to blink across the darkening horizon. The twin moons of planet Verdus were slowly rising, casting soft silver light down into the broken rocks. Jack sat near the cave entrance, holding his last flare tightly. He hadn't moved in hours. Every sound outside made his muscles tense. But the Gurak hadn't returned, not yet. Behind him, Sierra stirred. Her wound was still wrapped, her tail stiff and aching, but she was awake, and calmer. Jack turned. "You okay?" She blinked slowly and nodded. Her hand gently touched her tail. "Still hurts," she said quietly in broken English. Jack gave a small smile. "Yeah, but it's still there. You're still alive." Sierra looked at him with soft eyes. No human had ever spoken to her like that. No one had looked at her tail and said it was worth saving. She sat up with effort and pulled something from the sash around her waist. A small, glowing crystal, no bigger than a human thumb. She held it out to him. Jack tilted his head. "What is it?" She tapped the crystal. It lit up and showed a glowing blue hologram in the air, tiny stars, a rotating planet, then a city floating in the sky. "Home," she whispered. Jack stared. The image was beautiful. The floating towers, the glowing rivers of light. Then the image changed. Sierra pointed to the next part. A ship flying, then exploding. The final image, her, falling. Her tail hit the rocks. Darkness. Sierra closed the crystal. Her hands trembled. "Ship crash," she said. "No one come back." Jack looked at her in disbelief. "You're saying you're a royal?" Sierra nodded slowly. Lost. Alone. Jack rubbed his face. He wasn't just helping a random girl. She was from one of the sky cities. And no one had come looking for her? Why? Suddenly, a low boom echoed in the sky. Jack stood. A light streaked across the clouds. A ship. Sierra gasped. Signal crystal, they come! Jack rushed out of the cave. He waved his arms wildly, but the ship was far away. He pulled out the crystal from Sierra's hand and raised it high. The glow pulsed brighter and brighter like a beacon, but the ship turned. It didn't land. It was leaving. No, wait! Jack shouted. Sierra crawled out of the cave, her voice full of panic. No, come back. But it was too late. The sky swallowed the ship. Silence returned. Jack stood frozen. Sierra looked down at the crystal. Her hands clenched around it. They saw me. Still leave? Jack felt anger rise in his chest. Why would they leave you? You're their own. Sierra looked away. Tale is cursed. Bad omen. They say, I bring danger. Jack's eyes narrowed. You don't bring danger. You're the one in danger. He sat beside her. The wind moved gently through the canyon. For a moment, nothing else mattered but the look on her face, hurt, rejection, and quiet pain. But Jack wasn't done. He pulled out his communication patch, adjusted the settings, and tapped a small emergency distress code. Beep. Beep. Sierra looked at him, confused. He smiled. You're not the only one with signals. She leaned closer, curious. Jack pointed to the sky. That was their ship. Now let's see if someone good is out there. Sierra gave a tiny smile. It was the first real smile he had seen on her face. Her tail twitched slowly. The fire in the sky had come and gone, but Jack lit a different fire that night. Hope. The message in her tears. The night grew colder. Inside the cave, Jack watched Sierra as she stared at the small crystal in her hand. She hadn't spoken in a long time. Her golden eyes looked empty, like she had already accepted something Jack couldn't. Understand, he wanted to speak, to comfort her. But what could he say? She had hoped the ship would rescue her. Instead, they left. And worse, they saw her. They chose to leave her behind. Again. Sierra's fingers trembled around the crystal. Suddenly, the glowing stone flickered. A soft light spread through the cave. Jack leaned forward. What is it? The crystal projected a small image again, but this time it was different. It wasn't her home. It wasn't her city. It was a group of aliens. Some were tall, wearing robes. Others wore armor. They stood in a circle pointing at a small hologram of Sierra. A red mark flashed over her tail. Sierra turned away from the image. Her body shook. Tears fell silently down her cheeks. Jack reached out gently. What are they saying? Sierra didn't answer. She didn't need to. The message was clear. They had marked her, labeled her, not as lost, not as injured, but as cursed. A problem to be erased. Jack clenched his fists. So they really did leave you on purpose. Sierra wiped her tears with one shaking hand. I scream and sleep. I dream. They say monster follows me. They say my fear brings bad luck. Jack's voice cracked. You're just a girl. She shook her head. Not to them. There was a long silence. Then Jack said something that made her stop crying. You're not cursed. She looked at him, unsure. You're brave, he continued. You're hurt, scared. But you didn't give up. Even when that creature hunted, you. Even when your own people left. Her lips parted, but no words came. You didn't scream when the flare lit. Jack said. You didn't scream when they flew away. You're stronger than they know. Sierra looked down, then whispered, Why, you care? Jack took a deep breath. He didn't know the full answer, but he remembered being a scared kid once, back, on Earth, left behind by people he trusted, called names for being different, weak. He knew that look in her eyes. Because it used to be in his. No one should be left behind, he finally said, especially not for something they can't help. Sierra looked at him for a long time. Her golden eyes shimmered in the light, and then she did something unexpected. She handed him the crystal. Jack blinked. What's this for? You carry now, she said. If danger come, you decide. You lead. He didn't expect that, but he took it. And the moment he touched the crystal, it changed. The light grew brighter, and a new hologram appeared. This time it was a message, spoken in a deep alien voice. Sierra gasped. It's my mother. Jack turned to the image. A tall alien woman with the same glowing eyes and patterns as Sierra looked into the projection. My daughter, the voice said, if this reaches you, it means they've declared you unfit. I tried to stop them, but they overruled me. I'm sorry I failed you. Sierra covered her mouth. I couldn't protect you from the council, the voice continued, but maybe someone else will. Then the image ended. Sierra broke down. She cried hard, her body trembling. Jack moved close and gently put an arm around her. Her tears soaked into his shirt, but this time they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of truth, of understanding. Her mother did love her. She had tried. It wasn't her fault. She wasn't cursed. She was betrayed. But not by everyone. Not anymore. She had Jack, and Jack wasn't going anywhere. Only the human stayed. The morning sun touched the canyon walls, casting long golden rays into the dark spaces below. Sierra had cried herself to sleep. Jack sat beside her, holding the crystal in one hand and his small knife in the other. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that alien council, cold faces, pointing fingers, branding a child cursed just because of her tail. He didn't know much about alien politics, but he knew what cruelty looked like. And this was cruelty. Suddenly, a sharp sound broke the quiet. Engines, not high in the sky, low, nearby. Jack stood and stepped out of the cave. Dust rose from a narrow trail between the cliffs. A small alien search craft landed at the edge of the canyon. Sierra woke up, eyes wide. Another ship? She asked. Jack helped her sit up. Looks like it. A tall alien soldier stepped out of the craft. He was followed by two others. They were from her people. Same markings, same robes. But their faces were unreadable. Jack moved in front of the cave, blocking their view of Sierra. The lead alien stepped forward. His voice was calm but cold. We received a signal, a girl, marked. Jack didn't move. She's not marked, she's hurt. She's dangerous, the alien replied. You don't understand what she brings. I understand she's a child, Jack snapped. And she was trapped, bleeding, hunted, alone. Where were you? The alien narrowed his eyes. This is not your world, human. You do not get to decide. Jack stepped closer. Maybe not, but I was the one who saved her. I was the one who stayed. Silence fell between them. Then Sierra's voice broke through the stillness. Let me speak. She pushed herself forward, wincing from pain, but standing with her hand on the cave wall. The aliens looked at her. Her voice was soft but steady. I screamed because I was afraid, not because I was cursed. I was alone, hurt, lost. The lead alien shook his head. You called the Guruk. Your kind. Jack cut him off. She didn't call it. The monster hunted her screams because it's a predator. That's not her fault. One of the soldiers looked uncertain. Another glanced at the lead alien. Doubt was growing. Sierra raised the crystal. My mother sent a message. She tried to protect me. She believed I had a future. Jack stepped beside her. And I do too. The lead alien looked down at the girl, tail wrapped, body trembling, but eyes shining with courage. He looked at the human, standing firm, knife still gripped tight, daring them to try anything. Then he turned away. You want her? Keep her. She is no longer of our kind. Jack's breath caught. He expected more argument, More fight. But they were walking away. Sierra's voice shook. You really leave again? The lead alien didn't even answer. The ship rose slowly into the sky and disappeared behind the cliffs. Silence. Then Sierra collapsed to her knees. They left me again, she whispered. Jack rushed to her and caught her. No, he said. They didn't leave you, she looked up. You chose to stay, he said. And I chose to stay with you. Sierra stared at him. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she whispered, only the human stayed. A tale once trapped, now free. The sun rose higher, warming the canyon stones. For the first time in days, the wind felt soft, no longer sharp with fear or cold. Jack sat near a shallow stream, cleaning a cloth with fresh water. Sierra lay nearby, on a blanket of dried vines he had gathered. Her wound was healing and the bruising around her tail was fading. But the biggest change wasn't her injury, it was her eyes. They no longer looked broken. They looked alive. Free. Sierra watched the clouds move across the sky. Her golden eyes blinked slowly, peaceful for the first time. Jack came back and sat beside her. Feeling better? She nodded. Tail doesn't hurt anymore. Not like before. Jack smiled. That's good. You're strong. She looked down, at her tail. It curled gently beside her. For a long time, she said softly, I thought this tail was a curse. Ugly. Wrong. Jack raised an eyebrow. It helped you balance, jump, move faster, and save that crystal. I think it's amazing. She giggled quietly. You say that, even though it trapped me under rocks? Jack laughed. Hey, I didn't say it was smart, just amazing. They both laughed now. The sound echoed in the canyon, but this time it didn't bring danger, it brought light. Hope. Suddenly a sound buzzed on Jack's communicator. He tapped the side. A voice crackled through. Rescue shuttle inbound. Human signal received. Jack blinked. They answered? Sierra looked confused. Your people? He nodded. Yeah. Took them long enough. Within an hour, a small human rescue shuttle hovered down into the canyon. Two medics jumped out and ran to Jack and Sierra. The medic stopped when he saw Sierra's glowing skin and long tail. She's with you? The medic asked carefully. Jack nodded. Yeah, she's my friend. The medic hesitated, then offered Sierra a hand. Then she's with us too. Sierra took the hand. Carefully, the medics helped her onto the shuttle. Jack sat beside her, his arm gently around her shoulders. As the shuttle rose into the sky, Sierra looked out the window. Below, the canyon grew smaller. The rocks, the shadows, the place where she was once trapped all fell behind. She touched her tail. Once it had been a reason for her to cry. Now it was simply hers, a part of her story. She turned to Jack. Where we go now? She asked. Jack looked out the window. Someplace better, somewhere you can be safe. Free. Sierra leaned her head against his arm. Thank you, Jack. He looked down at her. For what? For being the one who came when I screamed, for being the one who stayed. Jack smiled, his eyes soft. You're not alone anymore, Sierra. The shuttle broke through the clouds, and far below the canyon echoed no longer with screams, but with the memory of a tale once trapped and the human who refused to leave. The end.